The most brilliant student I mentored for 3 years was asking teachers for money with invented stories. I found out in the teacher's lounge. What I found revealed something that changed how I understand my responsibility as a teacher. There are students who mark you, who are not only the most intelligent, even though sometimes they are also that. They're the ones who have something that cannot be completely taught. A way of looking at problems from an angle others do not find. A capacity to connect ideas that in most people takes years longer to develop. Santiago was that kind of student. 16 when I met him. Now 19. 3 years in which I had been the person who had most believed in him at the school, who had managed the scholarship, who had written the recommendation letters, who had been in conversations with his family when things had gotten difficult at home, and who that Tuesday in the teacher's lounge heard the chemistry teacher tell the history teacher a story I recognized immediately because it was almost identical to the one Santiago had told me, but with different details. My name is Roberto. I am 42 years old. I am a philosophy teacher at a public high school, and I have spent 12 years at that institution where I know most students better than any other teacher because philosophy forces a kind of conversation that other subjects do not produce in the same way. Santiago was 19 years old. He had been my student since his third year of high school. He had finished his baccalaureate 4 months ago with the highest average in his class. He had received a full scholarship to study engineering at a top-tier public university. The scholarship included a monthly stipend for living expenses that was not enough to live in the city where the university was located, but that was a starting point. I knew Santiago's economic situation was difficult. His parents worked the land. There were younger siblings. The scholarship was the difference between Santiago going to university or not. I knew all of that, and all of that had been part of why, when Santiago had asked to borrow 2,000 pesos from me a month earlier telling me he needed to pay the deposit on the room he was going to rent, I had given it to him without much hesitation. Because I knew his story. Because I trusted him. Because in 3 years of mentoring, I had believed I knew him well. The conversation I overheard in the teacher's lounge was between Carmen, the chemistry teacher, and Leticia, the history teacher. Carmen was telling Leticia that Santiago had asked to borrow money from her, that he had told her he needed to pay the deposit on his room, that she had given him 1,500 pesos. I stayed listening, without participating yet. Leticia said Santiago had also asked her, that he had told her he needed the money for first semester books, that she had given him 800 pesos. Carmen said he had told her it was for the room deposit. Leticia said he had told her it was for the books. The two looked at each other. I came closer. I asked whether Santiago had also told them about a situation with the room deposit. Carmen asked whether he had also asked me. I told her yes. 2,000 pesos. For the room deposit. The three of us stayed in silence for a moment. Carmen asked whether we knew how many others he had asked. None of us knew. I asked Carmen whether she had Santiago's cell phone number. She told me yes. I asked her not to contact him yet, that I needed to understand the extent before making any move. I spent the following afternoon talking discreetly with the teachers at the school who had taught Santiago. Not all of them. Those who had the kind of close relationship with students that made it more likely Santiago had approached them. By the end of the day, I had conversations with 6 teachers. Santiago had asked 5 of them for money. Me, Carmen, Leticia, the math teacher, and the school's academic director. The stories were variations on the same theme. Emergencies or urgent needs related to the first months at university. The room deposit. The books. An unexpected university procedure. The repair of the computer he needed for the first semester. Amounts that individually were not large. Between 200 and 2,000 pesos. That added up to approximately 7,300 pesos. I did not call Santiago immediately. What I did was the same as in other difficult situations involving students. Think before acting. What did I know for certain? That he had asked 5 teachers at the school for money with stories that were not consistent with each other. What did I not know? Whether the emergencies were completely invented or whether there was something real behind each story that had been exaggerated or modified. Whether the money he asked for was going somewhere, he could not say for some reason. Whether there was something about his real situation at university that I did not know. What did I need before confronting him? To talk to someone in his family if possible. to verify whether he was still enrolled at the university, to have clarity about what I wanted to result from the conversation when I had it. I called Santiago's mom, not to accuse her or worry her before having more information. I called saying I want to know how Santiago was doing at university, that I was his mentor and followed up with my students in their first year. His mom told me he was fine, that he had had some adjustment difficulties at first, that the scholarship support was not enough for the real cost of living in that city, that sometimes she sent him something, but they did not have much either. I asked whether Santiago had mentioned any specific emergency to her in recent weeks. She took a while. She told me not that she knew of, but he told her everything was fine when they talked. I called the university's scholarship office, without giving Santiago's name first. I asked about the status of scholarships for the current cycle. I confirmed the scholarships were active and that the monthly support was being deposited normally, that there were no reports of problems with the deposits. With that information, I sat down to think about what I wanted to result from the conversation with Santiago. The answer I arrived at after a day of thinking about it was more complex than I had expected. I did not want Santiago to pay back the money as the primary objective. I wanted to understand what had happened, because the 7,300 pesos distributed among 5 teachers told me Santiago had a real need for money, or that he had a problem he did not know how to solve any other way, or both. And neither of those possibilities was resolved only by the confrontation about the money. I sent Santiago a message. I told him I wanted to talk to him, whether he could come to the school that weekend, that it was important. Santiago responded within 2 hours. He told me yes. Saturday. Santiago arrived Saturday at 11 in the morning. He arrived with the expression of someone who already knows what the conversation is going to be about, even if they do not know exactly how much the other person knows. We sat in the classroom where I had taught him philosophy for 3 years. I told him directly that I had spoken with several teachers at the school, that I knew he had asked 5 of us for money with different stories for each one. That before saying anything else, I wanted to hear his version. Santiago did not deny it. What he did was something I did not expect from a 19-year-old. He stayed in silence for almost a minute, and then he told me the truth. He told me the first 2 months at university had been the worst of his life, that the scholarship support was not enough for the real cost of living in that city, that he had found a cheap room, but that food, transportation, and materials costs left him without money by mid-month, that he had not wanted to tell his parents because they were already doing everything they could, that he had not wanted to tell me because he felt it would disappoint me, that he had found in the school's teachers people who cared about him and whom he knew would help him if he asked, that he had invented different stories for each one because if he told the same story to everyone it was easier to be discovered, that he knew what he was doing was wrong, that he had thought about paying back the money when he could, that he had never found the moment to do it. I asked whether he had thought about calling me and telling me the truth. He told me yes, many times, that every time he had been about to do it, the fear of disappointing me had won. I sat with that answer processing. It was the second time in a short period I heard from someone close that the fear of disappointing me had been greater than the possibility of asking me directly for help. The first had been with a colleague. Now with Santiago. That was not coincidence. It was information about something in how I built my relationships with the people I mentored. I told Santiago several things. The first, that what he had done had created a problem that needed to be resolved. Not only the money, the trust of 5 people who had believed his stories, that required being addressed directly with each of those people, not with a generic apology, with an honest conversation with each teacher. The second, that the economic situation he described was exactly the kind of thing I existed as a mentor for, that if he had called me 2 months ago and told me the truth, I would have looked for solutions with him, that the scholarship had emergency funds that were not used because nobody requested them, that there were support organizations for first-year students at that university that I knew about, that none of that had been possible because he had been afraid to tell me the truth. The third, that the fear of disappointing me told me something about how I had built the relationship with him, that apparently I had built an image of such high expectation that he had felt he could not come to me with his failures, that was something I needed to examine, that it was not his fault, but that it was information that mattered. Santiago spoke with each teacher, not as a group, individually, honestly about what had happened and why. Most teachers received that conversation with more generosity than Santiago had expected. Carmen told him she understood the desperation, but that next time he needed help, he should tell her directly. The academic director managed access to the scholarship's emergency funds. The money Santiago had borrowed was paid back over 3 months. What I processed in the following weeks was more about myself than about Santiago. Had I built with my most promising students a relationship of expectation that was actually a burden? Did the way I supported them also create the pressure of not being able to fail in front of me? How many students had preferred to resolve their problems in inadequate ways rather than come to me because they feared disappointing me? Those questions did not have immediate answers, but they informed how I changed some things in how I relate to the students I mentor. I started speaking more explicitly about my own failures in the classroom, making more visible that the mentoring relationship includes the space to make mistakes, telling them explicitly that coming to me with a difficult problem was not going to change what I thought of them. Small changes that maybe do not change everything, but that change something. What I want you to take from this story has parts for very different people. For those who are mentors in any context, the mentoring relationship produces in the person being mentored an image of what the mentor expects. That image can be motivating. It can also become a barrier that prevents that person from coming with their real problems. If the people you mentor do not bring you their failures, it may be because everything is going well for them. Or it may be because the space you have built is not a space where failures are welcome. It is worth asking which it is. For those who recognize themselves in Santiago's position, asking directly for help from someone who cares about you is almost always better than building solutions that require deceiving. Even if you're afraid of disappointing them, even if you do not know how to say it, direct conversation produces possibilities. Deception produces debts that grow. And for everyone, the people who most support us deserve to have us tell them the truth about what we are living through, not to avoid disappointing them, but because without the truth, they cannot help us in the way we really need. If this story reached you, comment. Have you had in your life a mentor or authority figure so important to you that the fear of disappointing them prevented you from asking for help when you most needed it? Like if you believe mentors have the responsibility to actively build the space where the person being mentored can come with their failures and not only with their achievements. Subscribe for more real stories. Share with someone who is a mentor or has a mentor and who might benefit from reflecting on this dynamic. Reflection to take with you. The best mentor is not the one who produces the most pride in who they mentor. It is the one who builds a space where who they mentor can come with everything. Achievements and failures. Certainties and confusions. Questions that do not have answers yet. That space is not built only with support. It is also built with the visibility of the mentor's own vulnerability, with letting those you mentor know that you have also failed, and that failing is not the end of anything.